As the pendulum swings, as it tends to do, we see a shift in the art of the 1930s which reflects its historical context. In Europe, this comes about in the flourishing of a style that's been brewing for decades in various guises, Surrealism. So we go from this kind of technocratic, abstract art that we saw in the past few images to this kind of dreamlike, otherworldly, primordial art that has less to do with making decisions and more to do with elements of chance in the subconscious. Like the Dadaists, Surrealists also used found objects in their work. This Surrealist object that we see on the screen was inspired by a conversation that Merritt Oppenheim had with Pablo Picasso and his girlfriend Dora Maar when they were all at a Paris cafe. Picasso was apparently admiring Oppenheim's bracelet, which was covered in fur, and he said, "You can cover anything in fur these days." And she said, "Yeah, even this cup and saucer." So she went out, she bought herself a brand new teacup, saucer, and spoon at a department store, and then she brought them home, covered them with fur, specifically the fur of a Chinese gazelle. In so doing, she transformed these objects that normally are used for one particular kind of function and made them function less. It also gives us this kind of unsettling feeling if you imagine putting that cup up to your lips or the spoon up to your lips. And what she's done here is something very common to Surrealism. She's making the familiar strange and revealing hidden desires. So again, like Dada, there's the use of found objects, but unlike Dada, from which in many ways Surrealism sprang, Surrealism emphasized the subconscious rather than nihilism or the rejection of everything. I want to play a little game or show you how a little game was played amongst Surrealist circles. So they played this game that they called the Exquisite Corpse. In French, it's called Cadavre Exquise. And the Exquisite Corpse was a parlor game involving elements of unpredictability, chance, unseen elements, and group collaboration, all of which worked within this new surrealist kind of language. So you can do this exercise with whoever you're quarantined with at home right now. You start by folding a paper in half and then fold it in half again. You fold over the first flap and then you draw a head. Then you fold over that head so that it's not visible and you pass it on to the person to your left or whatever. And then that person draws a torso without looking at what you had just drawn. And then they fold that over and pass it along. And then the next person draws the waist down to the knees. They fold that over so you can't see what they drew, and they pass it to the last person who draws from the knees down. So when you're done, you have an exquisite corpse, or a cadavre exquise. So it makes no sense because you don't know what the last person has drawn. So what you're drawing is probably not going to match up so easily. So it involves elements of chance in that way. We can also talk about the influence of dreams. The literal translation of surrealism is, in French, beyond realism. Surréalisme, beyond or above realism. And especially in the 1930s, I think surrealism really speaks to this kind of unsettling feeling. So like in this example, we don't really see anything to fear. It's more of a lack of a human presence, or things that shouldn't be are happening. Things that are once familiar made strange, like the melting clocks. The Surrealists were also influenced by the writings of Sigmund Freud, the psychologist. They wanted to rebel against the constraints of the rational mind, and by extension, normal society. So Freud and other psychoanalysts used a variety of techniques to bring to the surface this subconscious mind. And the Surrealists borrowed a lot of those same techniques to stimulate their own writing and art. The thinking is that your true creativity comes from layers deep within your mind, not your conscious mind. Freud's interest in dreams as well. He wrote about the interpretation of dreams, for example. That also had a huge impact on the Surrealists, who were interested, again, in the subconscious mind more than the rational conscious mind. Like Dali, Frida Kahlo created artworks that were painted in a realistic style, yet also made familiar things look strange, as if out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare, more accurately. This painting by Frida on the right was completed shortly after her divorce from Diego Rivera, who she was famously married to. So it's called The Two Fridas. On the left, she's dressed in a more traditional outfit, and she has a opened up heart, which you can see she's holding a pair of scissors, and there's blood coming down, and it's kind of gruesome. On the right, she's dressed in a more kind of like modern style, and she has an intact heart. But you can see that the two are inextricably linked. The two selves are holding hands. In this painting called Moses, at the top we see a radiant sun. Below the sun in the center seems to be a fetus still in the womb. And then below that is the baby, I'm assuming after it's born, which has, if you can see, actually has like a third eye in its forehead. The baby's face kind of resembles portraits that she had painted of Diego Rivera previously, and she often painted him with a third eye in her other paintings as well. If we zoom in on either side of the fetus in the center, we see heroes, we see gods, other human beings. Do you recognize anyone here? Anyone look familiar? We see Aztec gods, Christian iconography, art historical references, and wait a minute, is that the Illuminati? So why is it called Moses? What did Frida write about this painting in her essay that you read for today? Does the description of the painting correspond with what you see now? Some surrealist art is totally abstract, like Miraut's composition. He used this tactic of automatism to tap into his subconscious mind. Think of it like when you're on the phone and you start like absentmindedly doodling on a piece of paper. Automatism is a term, it comes from psychology, and it refers to the involuntary actions and processes not under control by the conscious mind. So that would include like dreaming, breathing, if you have some sort of nervous tic, that kind of thing. Automatism plays a role in surrealist techniques such as spontaneous or automatic writing, painting, and drawing. Free association of images and words, and collaborative creation through games like The Exquisite Corpse. Oftentimes, surrealism is discussed as apolitical. Much surrealist work deals with dreams, chance operations, abstract autonomous forms, etc. But several artists like Miraut or Picasso in the 30s made strong political statements through this surrealist style. Guernica, for example, which was the centerpiece for the Spanish pavilion at the 1937 World's Fair. This painting depicts the tiny town of Guernica in the Basque section of northern Spain, which had been bombed out by German and Italian airplanes led by Francisco Franco in 1936. Miraut also created work to support Spain in their time of need, creating a poster that says Aide España, or Help Spain. All right, so that's it for this week. If you have any questions at all, as always, please let me know. Feel free to reach out, and in the meantime, take care. Have a great week.